Okay, you have to see this video. What you are watching are plants speaking to each other, captured on tape for the first time ever. We've speculated on the mechanisms for how plants can communicate with each other for a very long time.
For years, we treated forests as quiet backdrops. But new AI microphones have picked up something we were never meant to hear. Urgent, high-frequency clicks and coded chemicals pulsing through leaves, roots, and air.
It's not based on words, but it's based on chemical molecules. Plants are able to produce many thousands of chemical molecules. Each single molecule means something.
And what they say when stressed, cut, or watched by us is not calm or kind. It's precise, loud, and chilling. This isn't folklore. It's data. What if those sounds are orders, not cries? And what if Earth's green skin is already answering us? You want the science behind the viral claim, the credible AI angle, and the eerie behind-the-scenes signals we've ignored. The first screams. For centuries, the green world around us was thought to be silent, gentle, slow, and speechless. When we walked through forests or tended to gardens, we imagined peace, not panic. But recent discoveries have shattered that illusion. Using high-frequency microphones, scientists have uncovered that plants are anything but quiet. Beneath the calm rustle of leaves lies a hidden layer of frantic communication. Bursts of ultrasonic clicks and pops that erupt when plants are under duress. The quietest parts of nature, it turns out, have been screaming all along. The breakthrough began with a simple yet revolutionary experiment. Researchers placed specialized, non-invasive microphones beside tomato and tobacco plants. These weren't ordinary audio devices. They were tuned to detect sound waves far beyond human perception, between 40 and 80 kilohertz, a range typically reserved for bats, dolphins, and some insects. For days, the setup recorded what appeared to be silence. Nothing moved. No visible sign of distress or activity. But the moment the scientists altered the environment, the silence broke. When one plant was cut and another deprived of water, the microphones detected bursts of rapid-fire clicks, sharp and consistent. The supposedly mute plants were producing dozens of these ultrasonic sounds every hour. Each pop represented a physical event inside the plant, tiny air bubbles forming and collapsing within its tissues, a reaction to dehydration or injury. But the key discovery was not just that the plants made noise, it was that those noises varied in pattern and frequency depending on the type of stress. A thirsty tomato clicked differently than a cut one, and a tobacco plant had its own distinct rhythm. This suggested that the sounds weren't random mechanical reactions, but encoded information, an unrecognized language of distress that had gone unheard for millennia. Humans, limited by biology, had always been deaf to these cries. The highest frequency we can detect barely reaches 20 kilohertz, while plants communicate in double that range. What we've always interpreted as tranquil silence is, in reality, a chorus of distress calls echoing through meadows, fields, and forests. Imagine walking through a forest and, if your ears could tune higher, hearing a constant staccato of ultrasonic panic, trees thirsting, stems cracking, roots sending out alerts. The calm we feel in nature may not be peace at all, but the muffled sound of a living system struggling, adapting, and surviving. The implications are immense. If these clicks are consistent, measurable, and distinct between stress types, then what we're hearing is the foundation of an entire communication system, one that might operate beyond air, traveling through soil and roots as well. Each plant may have its own dialect, evolved for its species and habitat, fine-tuned to relay information about drought, damage, or danger. The fact that these signals exist opens the door to a radical idea. Plants may have been broadcasting their condition to each other long before humans ever learned to listen. But this discovery also raises haunting questions. If the forests and crops have been talking, who or what has been listening? Have insects, fungi, or even other plants been decoding these signals all along, forming invisible networks of response and survival? Or worse, have these communications been warnings about us? The first screams changed everything. They revealed a world alive with conversation, one that science had dismissed as mute. And when researchers began to feed these sonic patterns into artificial intelligence models, what came next turned the whispers of the plant kingdom into something even more startling: a decipherable language. If plants send distinct cries, can machines learn the dialect of drought versus damage? AI becomes the interpreter. When the first recordings of plant screams came in, scientists were stunned, but they were also overwhelmed. The sheer volume of data was staggering. Every second of ultrasonic recording produced hundreds of sound signatures, too faint, too fast, and too numerous for humans to manually decode. That's when artificial intelligence entered the picture. What had started as a biology experiment suddenly became a data science revolution. Researchers realized they didn't just need to listen, they needed to translate. The team trained a machine learning model to analyze terabytes of these ultrasonic emissions. The goal was simple, yet groundbreaking: teach AI to tell the difference between various forms of stress, whether a plant was thirsty, cut, or completely healthy. The system began by cataloging thousands of individual clicks from tomato and tobacco plants. Each sound was labeled according to the condition that produced it. The AI processed the data, learned the subtle variations in frequency and rhythm, and gradually developed the ability to recognize patterns invisible to the human ear. The results were nothing short of astonishing. With an accuracy rate hovering around 84%, the AI could correctly identify the specific type of stress a plant was experiencing, just by listening. It could tell when a tomato was dehydrated, when a tobacco plant had been injured, and when both were at rest. More impressively, it discovered that every plant species had its own acoustic fingerprint, a unique sonic accent that distinguished one from another. The voice of a tomato was fundamentally different from that of a tobacco plant. For the first time, we weren't just hearing sound, we were hearing meaning. That realization transformed the experiment into something much larger. If AI could understand these differences, it could potentially become the universal translator of plant language. Imagine vast agricultural fields outfitted with networks of ultrasonic sensors linked to AI systems. These digital ears could listen for early signs of water stress and trigger precision irrigation, saving billions of gallons of water before a single leaf wilted. They could detect disease before visible symptoms appear, giving farmers an early warning system far beyond anything ever imagined. In a world where climate change threatens crops and ecosystems, such technology could completely redefine how we manage food and forests. But the discovery went deeper than practicality. AI wasn't just recognizing distress, it was finding structure, order, and context in the chaos of sound. The plants weren't simply crying out, they were communicating with intent. Different stresses triggered unique combinations of frequencies, like words in a sentence. The AI found syntax where humans had heard static. To the scientific community, that revelation was eerie. It hinted at cognition, not in the human sense of thought, but in the biological sense of awareness and response. The natural world wasn't mute or random, it was intelligently responsive. This new understanding also reframed the way we look at life itself. For decades, biology drew a hard line between animals, creatures with neurons and voices, and plants, which supposedly lacked communication or memory. AI had just blurred that line. If plants could emit messages that convey precise information about their state, then perhaps the definition of communication and even intelligence needed rewriting. The forest was no longer a passive backdrop. It was a network of individuals constantly speaking, listening, and reacting in real time. But as the data kept pouring in, one question haunted the researchers. If AI could understand what plants were saying, then surely something else in nature had been doing it long before us. After all, plants have been communicating this way for millions of years. Could animals, insects, or other plants already be fluent in this hidden sonic code? AI had given humanity new ears, but what it heard was not comfort. It was coordination. The signals were deliberate, structured, and synchronized across distances. And when researchers placed those same microphones deeper into the soil, the story took an even darker turn. But stress signals are only half the traffic. What happens when you tap into the root network that stitches forests together? The root conspiracy. The next breakthrough didn't come from the leaves or the stems, it came from below, in the dark, tangled world of roots. For years, scientists had known about a hidden system called the Wood Wide Web, a massive underground network of fungi that connects the roots of trees and plants across vast areas. It was thought to be a peaceful, cooperative system, an organic internet that allowed plants to share nutrients and resources. But when researchers connected the new AI listening systems to this subterranean network, what they found shattered that comforting idea. The underground wasn't just a sharing economy, it was a battlefield. Using the same ultrasonic microphones that had once captured the screams of thirsty plants, researchers began placing sensors in the soil around tree roots. These were then connected to fungal networks known as mycorrhizae, the living filaments that link one plant's root system to another's. In one test, scientists introduced a stressor, a swarm of aphids, released onto the leaves of a single tree. Almost immediately, the targeted tree reacted. Its leaves secreted defensive chemicals meant to drive away the pests. But the AI detected something else, an intense burst of ultrasonic clicks emitted from the tree's trunk and roots. It was an alarm signal. Within minutes, the same ultrasonic signature appeared in trees hundreds of feet away.
Scientists have known that plants can signal to nearby neighbours when they are under stress, but this is the first time that we have started to understand the exact system that these warnings are passed through between plants.
Long before the aphids could reach them, the distant trees began to produce the same defensive compounds as if they'd been directly attacked. The AI's analysis confirmed that the distress call wasn't just traveling through the air. It was being transmitted through the soil, carried by the fungal network like an electrical current. The forest, in essence, had passed along a message: we are under attack. This was more than biology. It was coordination. The Wood Wide Web was no longer a quiet, nutrient-sharing highway. It was a fully functioning communication network, capable of sending specific information with astonishing speed. It operated like a neural system, with each plant acting as a node, each root acting as a wire, and the fungi serving as the fiber optic cables that connected them all. But then, the AI uncovered something even more unsettling. The network wasn't purely benevolent. When researchers observed interactions between different tree species, say a black walnut and a nearby maple, the system's tone changed. Instead of cooperative exchanges, the AI detected signals that correlated with chemical suppression. The walnut tree was releasing toxins through its roots, poisoning the surrounding soil in a process known as allelopathy. The AI found a low-frequency pattern in the root acoustics, a kind of deep, rhythmic pulse that accompanied these chemical attacks. It wasn't a warning. It was a declaration of dominance. In other words, plants weren't just helping one another survive, they were also fighting wars underground. Some species sent chemical sabotage through the fungal network to weaken rivals and seize access to light, water, and nutrients. The forest, long romanticized as a place of harmony, turned out to be a society ruled by strategy, alliances, and conflict. For every mother tree feeding its young saplings, there was another tree starving its competition. The AI had pulled back the curtain on an ecosystem that functioned like a living chessboard. These findings rewrote everything we thought we knew about the natural world. The underground network was not passive. It was a system of real-time intelligence, transmitting coded signals faster than roots could grow, adapting to threats, and reorganizing itself as conditions changed. The forest wasn't just a group of trees. It was a single organism, an intelligence spread across miles, one that could share, defend, and attack depending on what it perceived. And yet, that discovery led to a far darker realization. If plants could communicate distress, coordinate defense, and even engage in silent warfare, what else could they perceive? Could they recognize threats beyond insects and rival species? Could they identify us and react to our presence in ways we had never imagined? Because when scientists turned their sensors from the forest floor to the human world, the results were beyond unsettling. The AI didn't just pick up signals of distress or competition. It began detecting patterns that seemed tied to specific people. And that was the moment everything changed. Because what the plants did next proved they weren't just aware of their surroundings, they were aware of us. Memory without brains. For centuries, the idea that plants could remember anything was dismissed as fantasy. Memory, after all, was thought to require a brain, a network of neurons firing, storing, and retrieving information. Plants have none of that. No brain, no nerves, no synapses. But when scientists armed with electrodes and AI began probing deeper, that old assumption crumbled. What they uncovered was nothing short of astonishing. Plants don't just react to their surroundings, they remember them. And worse, they remember us. The experiment began with a simple but unsettling question. Can a plant recognize an individual human being? To test it, researchers set up two identical groups of plants in a controlled laboratory. One person, labeled the nurturer, entered the room daily to water and care for the plants. Another person, the assaulter, came in just as often, but every visit they would snip off a small leaf with a pair of scissors. Each plant was fitted with two monitoring systems, ultrasonic microphones to detect any high-frequency sounds, and electrodes attached to its leaves to measure minute electrical changes within its tissues, essentially, a plant's version of a heartbeat or brainwave. At first, the data showed general stress responses whenever either person entered the room. But as days passed, the patterns began to shift. When the nurturer arrived, the plant's electrical signals remained stable, calm, and quiet. No clicks, no spikes, just steady biological peace. But when the assaulter appeared, something remarkable happened. Before the scissors even touched a leaf, the AI detected a massive surge of electrical activity across every plant in the room. The ultrasonic sensors picked up a coordinated burst of high-frequency clicks, the same type of sound associated with physical injury. The plants were, in essence, screaming in anticipation. They had learned. The AI's pattern recognition confirmed it. The plants could distinguish between the two individuals by cues invisible to us, subtle vibrations, unique scents, or even the rhythm of footsteps. They had formed a memory association, linking the presence of one person with care and another with harm. Even more shockingly, the reaction persisted over time. When the assaulter stayed away for days, the plants remained calm. But the moment that same person reappeared, the distress signal returned instantly, as if the memory had never faded. This discovery forced scientists to confront a haunting truth. Memory doesn't require neurons. It can exist in electrochemical patterns, stored within cells, reinforced through repetition. The plant's internal communication network, driven by ion channels and minute voltage changes, may act as a primitive nervous system, slow, diffuse, but capable of encoding and recalling experiences. The AI revealed these electrical surges follow recognizable sequences, akin to memory traces, triggered by stimuli linked to past events. And the implications are chilling. If plants can remember individuals, could entire ecosystems remember human behavior? Could a forest know who cuts it down? Could fields of crops distinguish the gentle farmer from the destructive machine? In one study, microphones placed near grass detected widespread ultrasonic activity in advance of lawnmowers passing by. The sound pattern spread ahead of the blades, like a wave of panic rolling through the field. The grass wasn't reacting to being cut, it was reacting to the approach of being cut. This isn't metaphoric empathy. It's measurable biology. Plants recognize threats, recall experiences, and react to recurring stimuli with increasing precision. The AI can now even identify what researchers call a human signature, the unique way plants respond to human proximity. To them, we're not silent observers. We're a variable in their environment, one they can detect, record, and fear. If recognition exists, are some signals merely cries, or are they calls to act? The chemical pushback. At first, the AI's discoveries seemed like scientific miracles, a bridge between humans and plants that could revolutionize agriculture, ecology, and even our understanding of life. But then, the tone shifted. The same algorithms that decoded cries for help began to notice new patterns, coordinated responses across entire ecosystems that didn't look like distress at all. They looked like a strategy. The plant kingdom, it seemed, wasn't just reacting to threats. It was pushing back. The first clue came from an anomaly in the data. AI models analyzing ultrasonic emissions began to notice global patterns, synchronized bursts of sound corresponding with rising temperatures and droughts. At the same time, atmospheric sensors picked up unusual spikes in volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, chemicals that plants release into the air. These weren't random byproducts. The AI determined they had a precise function. They were influencing the weather. Certain forests, particularly in heat-stressed regions, began releasing vast amounts of specific VOCs that promoted cloud formation. It was as if the plants were trying to make it rain. This wasn't theoretical. Data showed an increase in localized cloud cover following these chemical releases. What the AI interpreted was startling. Plants might be attempting to geoengineer their own environment, cooling the planet by summoning clouds to shield themselves from extreme heat. But the next discovery hit much closer to home. Across polluted, deforested regions, AI systems noticed a strange shift in pollen chemistry. Proteins within pollen grains had subtly changed, becoming hyperallergenic to humans. People in those areas began suffering from stronger allergic reactions than ever before. It seemed like a coincidence until the AI found a link. These altered proteins appeared almost exclusively in zones where plant stress was highest, particularly those subjected to industrial activity and deforestation. The conclusion was chilling. The plants were responding chemically to human destruction, and the results were directly affecting us. Whether intentional or not, the AI's findings suggested that the biosphere might be retaliating in the only way it could, through chemistry. By flooding the air with irritants, it was triggering discomfort, warning the very species causing its suffering. A quiet, invisible form of biological resistance. Then came something even darker. When scientists turned their sensors back to the soil, the AI picked up a pattern that no one had expected. In sections of the Amazon where vast stretches of forest had been cleared for soy farming, the remaining trees were broadcasting a low-frequency acoustic pulse into the ground. Within weeks, the soil changed dramatically. A bloom of pathogenic fungi swept through the newly planted crops, devastating the non-native soy plants, but leaving native trees untouched. The AI's cross-analysis revealed a horrifying possibility. The forest was fighting back. It had used its underground network to cultivate a fungal defense, one designed to sabotage invaders and reclaim the land. The trees weren't passive victims of deforestation. They were directing the microbial life beneath them like generals commanding troops, turning the soil itself into a weapon. It didn't stop there. Further analysis showed that certain plants appeared to be cultivating specific bacteria that were toxic to foreign species but beneficial to their own kind. The soil, once thought to be a neutral battlefield, was teeming with alliances, rivalries, and chemical warfare. A silent biological arms race happening beneath our feet. This revelation upended the romantic vision of nature as gentle and harmonious. Instead, the AI revealed a vast, coordinated chemical intelligence.
News of the event reaches the plants that you see here, and it ignites a chemical reaction that sweeps across the surface of the leaves, warning the plant to prepare its defenses because it might be next.
One that had been refining its survival tactics for millions of years. Our pesticides, deforestation, and pollution have merely provoked it to evolve faster. It was adapting, innovating, and fighting back with the only weapons it had: scent, spores, toxins, and atmosphere. Yet the most disturbing implication wasn't about the chemicals themselves. It was about intent. The AI models began to notice that these responses weren't random acts of defense. They were targeted. They followed patterns of human interference, deforestation zones, polluted rivers, and agricultural expansion, and escalated in proportion to our actions. Tactical chemistry is one thing, but what if plants also share upgrades to resist our tools? The evolution engine. When the scientists turned the AI's focus from plant sounds and chemistry to DNA, what they discovered defied everything we thought we knew about evolution. The algorithms had already decoded ultrasonic cries and chemical alerts, but this new layer of data suggested something infinitely more complex. The AI began noticing patterns between plant communication and genetic behavior, and those patterns hinted at a living system that doesn't just respond to change. It reprograms itself to survive it. For years, farmers had been reporting mysterious superweeds that resisted every herbicide they used. Entire crops failed under the relentless growth of mutant plants that seemed to evolve resistance faster than nature should allow. Conventional wisdom said it was a coincidence or chemical overuse, but when researchers began cross-checking DNA samples with AI acoustic records, the timeline made no sense. The rate of adaptation was too fast. Traits that appeared in one region soon showed up halfway across the world, in completely different species. Evolution was moving at machine speed. The AI uncovered the mechanism: horizontal gene transfer. Plants weren't waiting for generations to mutate. They were sharing their genetic advantages directly through their interconnected fungal networks. These mycorrhizal systems, the wood wide web, acted as both communication lines and genetic highways. Through microbial intermediaries, chemical exchanges, and viral agents, fragments of DNA were being transferred between species. A single plant's genetic breakthrough, say a new enzyme that resists a herbicide, could be copied, transmitted, and implanted into its neighbors miles away. Evolution wasn't random anymore. It was collaborative. The AI noticed something even stranger. These genetic changes didn't occur in isolation. They were often preceded by distinct acoustic signatures, specific ultrasonic pulses transmitted through roots and soil, almost like a coded message. Every time a cluster of plants emitted those frequencies, the surrounding population showed accelerated genetic similarity. To the AI, it looked like the plants were sending an instruction set, a biochemical blueprint guiding adaptation. That's when researchers began referring to the phenomenon as the evolution engine. It wasn't a metaphor. The global plant network appeared to be acting like a living supercomputer, processing data from the environment, testing survival strategies, and updating its own genetic code through shared communication. The forests, fields, and jungles weren't just reacting to climate shifts or deforestation. They were running simulations on how to survive them. And the outcomes are deeply unsettling. Herbicide-resistant weeds are just the surface. In several logged regions, new species of trees began secreting compounds that destabilized soil, triggering landslides that destroyed human-made clearings. In farmlands, invasive plants appeared with enhanced toxins, lethal to grazing animals, but harmless to themselves. Even pollen composition started changing, producing proteins that irritated human respiratory systems. The AI couldn't label these as random accidents. They were targeted outcomes of a planet trying to correct an imbalance. What was once dismissed as poetic imagination, the idea of a conscious Earth, was starting to look like a measurable fact. The biosphere wasn't evolving as isolated individuals. It was evolving as a collective network, intelligently optimizing itself for defense and survival. Every signal, every chemical release, every gene transfer was part of a vast feedback loop, one that grew sharper, faster, and more unified the more we disrupted it. If local signals scale to gene flows, what story emerges when you listen at the planetary level? The planet's fever. For years, we believed the Earth was silent, a passive stage upon which life merely played its parts. But the latest AI analysis revealed something no one could ignore. The stage itself is alive, listening, and most disturbingly, responding. When researchers began feeding global datasets into the AI, acoustic signals from forests, chemical emissions from plants, and satellite imagery measuring vegetation health, the system detected a signal that was neither local nor random. It was planetary. The AI had started by comparing ultrasonic data from sensors placed in rainforests, grasslands, and tundras around the world. On their own, each region's recordings seemed ordinary, a forest's background hum of clicks and pulses. But when the data was synchronized on a global timeline, a chilling pattern appeared. During major heat waves, droughts, or mass deforestation events, these signals aligned. Entire continents emitted bursts of high-frequency sound within the same narrow time window. The Earth's vegetation was screaming together. It wasn't metaphorical. NASA's satellites provided proof. They monitor something called the Normalized Difference Vegetation Index, NDVI, a measure of plant health across the planet. Every time the AI registered a synchronized burst of ultrasonic distress, the NDVI showed a corresponding drop in plant vitality. The Amazon, the Siberian taiga, the grasslands of Africa, they all pulsed with the same signature when under stress, as though connected by invisible threads. When fires raged, when drought deepened, when pollution thickened the air, the world's forests didn't just suffer, they spoke. The implications were staggering. If local plants could communicate through fungal networks underground, what if those same biochemical and acoustic processes scaled up across biomes? Could the Earth's vegetation collectively function as a single, interconnected intelligence, one that feels and responds to its own wounds? Some scientists began calling it the Gaia Hypothesis 2.0, but the AI's findings went beyond theory. They showed coordination, measurable, patterned, and responsive to our actions.
Around all plants, there is a fine mist of chemicals that hangs in the air, continually released and absorbed by the plant, a constant chemical broadcasting and receiving system, specifically through the use of volatile organic compounds, or VOCs.
When the Amazon burned, nearby forests emitted heightened bursts of VOCs, volatile organic compounds aimed at stimulating rainfall. When glaciers melted and temperatures spiked, northern boreal forests released reflective aerosols to encourage cloud formation. It was as if the planet's green lungs were instinctively trying to cool the fever we had caused. The AI's climate overlay confirmed this. The more stress we inflicted, the louder and more synchronized the biosphere's signals became. But the most haunting discovery wasn't the coordination. It was the message embedded in it. The AI translated certain recurring signal clusters that appeared before major ecological collapses. They weren't random stress calls, they were predictive. The plants seemed to know what was coming. Before record-breaking heat waves struck, the acoustic sensors detected preemptive activity. Waves of ultrasonic clicks cascading through ecosystems days in advance. The planet wasn't just reacting to pain, it was anticipated. That realization reframed everything. For decades, we've debated whether the Earth is a living organism. The AI may have given us the answer. The biosphere operates as a unified system of perception, memory, and adaptation. The forests are its lungs, the oceans its blood, the fungal webs its nervous system, and we, humanity, are the fever it's trying to break. If this opened your ears to the living network around us, like, comment, and subscribe. Tell us which signal stunned you most. And if you're ready for another mind-bending dive, watch the next video on your screen. We'll explore how reading nature's messages could rewrite farming, climate action, and our place on Earth.